Hello, I hope you're very well and you're having a lovely week. I'm going to try and make a 15-minute video in one take by being super snappy, and I'm going to split it into three parts. The first part is a minute and a half of me talking to you about, well, this firstly, and then my ratings on the various websites. The second section is going to be 10 minutes on 6.5 puzzles, which I will share with you. And the next 3.5 minutes, very specific, is going to be me talking about me being a grump, a big grumpy chess player, and how yesterday I had a tough day. So, first 1.5 minutes. On Lichess, I have a classical rating of 1789, down from the dizzying heights of 1881 on November the 26th. I'm only going to be playing classical games. I'll talk to you about that in the next section, or in the last section actually. On chess.com, they don't have classical as a category. They only have rapid. So on chess.com's rapid, I have a rating of 1433. Now, I started on my old account with 1500. So again, I'm down by about 70 points. We'll talk about a little bit about that later. And then lastly, the ECF, the English Chess Federation. This is my over-the-board rating. I have a provisional rating of 1423 with them. That won't change very often, but it's only over the board. Moving on to puzzles. First puzzle. For all of these, I'm going to give you 3 seconds at the beginning to try and solve it. If you'd like to pause during that those 3 seconds, I'm not expecting you to solve it in 3 seconds, then please do, and then join us to go through the solutions. The first 2 are mate in 2s, so checkmate in 2 moves. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, for this, it's quite an aesthetic mate. I wanted to share just puzzles that I've been solving recently, and I've just picked out especially nice ones. So this is the reason I think this is particularly nice with this first check, giving the king only 1 legal move, is that with the mate, bam, the king looks like it has so much air around it, so much space to move, and yet it is a checkmate. So I thought this is very, very, very nice, especially the first move coming in with the king, with the queen at an angle, rather than coming straight down to D6 straight away. I thought that was very nice, sort of rounding up the king. Next puzzle, another mate in 2. So 3, 2, 1. This one, you can see the rook is controlling a lot. So the king doesn't really have much space to move, and if we give the king a check, it has to move over, and then we come in with the bishop for a checkmate. And this is even nicer. This is even more aesthetic because it's such an efficient use of pieces. We've got the rook covering these squares, so the king's sort of trapped in this little corner. The rook can't be taken because the bishop's protecting it. It's also the one giving the check. And then these last 2 squares, which are normally the ones which the rook, well, they are in this case the ones that the rook can't help with the checkmate itself. So this one's covered with the pawn, and the pawn is covered by the king. Just beautiful. These pieces aren't necessary. It's just a 4-piece checkmate. Very, very nice. I like that a lot. Next puzzle. It's a mate in 3. So I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. This one is very nice. It looks like there might be a checkmate on F2, but the king runs away. So we have to start with this check. The king can't go to the corner because the knight would go to F2 and give a checkmate. So instead, and the king can't come to F1 because the queen would just give a checkmate on F2. So instead, the knight takes, we give a check, forcing the king to the corner, and then now that that pawn has gone with the bishop check on move 1, we can give a lovely checkmate with the knight. I thought this is very sort of like a nice little dance that the pieces did there. The bishop sacrifices itself, and then the king, the queen, and knight are there to solve the checkmate problem. Next, mate in 3. We've got 2 more mate in 3s. These are going to take a little bit longer. So this took me a long time to solve when I was doing it. So take your time. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's take a moment. So we've got a king sort of looks like it's got so many options. This is why it took me so long. I finally realized that, okay, this pawn covers this square. The queen covers this square. If I was looking at this check, I was looking at this check, I was looking at the queen moving around, but eventually I realized, okay, if I give this check, the king can't go anywhere in that direction. It's sort of, I've made a wall. The king has to come this direction. Now, if you give that check on bishop to e3, then obviously the king can't come here. The queen covers this square. So this little corner has been made. And so the king only has two options. Let's look at the most critical line. So if we do give this check, the king doesn't want to stay on the fifth rank because it's too close to the center and the queen can come in. So let's look at what would happen if, oh, my apologies. Let's look what would happen if the king goes to d6. Well, in that case, the queen can come down, give another check, chasing the king further and further, and it also takes away this square. So the king isn't able to sort of tuck in between the queen and the rook. This check is very nice, and it forces the king to go even further. Doesn't technically force it, I'll explain in a second, but in this case, in the critical line where it's trying to escape, trying to get away, eventually the queen can give a checkmate. Lovely checkmate. It's protected by the king. These two squares are now, white wishes their own pieces weren't on these squares, and the king is in checkmate. So if we go back a little bit, so that first move down here, if the king comes across, then it's just a different mate into. It's easy to spot because these two pieces again stop the king escaping too far, and then when the king comes across, it's just mate. This pawn covers that square, the f5 square. And if instead of, if with this check, if the king came back up again, it's checkmate, using those two pieces to stop the king escaping. Very nice. Next puzzle. This is the puzzle which probably took me the longest, I'd say. And it's a mate in 3, so I'll give you 3, 2, 1. Okay, so what happened here is, it took me a while because it took me a while to realize that these two squares are covered by these two pieces. The rook obviously covers them, but it took me a while to realize actually the rook doesn't need to be there. So we can move over with the rook to give a check. The rook's covered by the bishop, these two squares, and obviously this is covered there. So again, we're sort of creating this wall for a king that looks like it has lots of choices. This bishop flies in here, so your king can't come to, it will be g3. So the king actually only has one legal move. It comes across, and then this is a really nice end to this mate in 3 puzzle. So that was just one move, so we've got 2 more moves to make. That king now has 0 legal moves. The bishop comes in, the rook comes in, the rook covers these two, and the bishop is along here. So all we need to do is give a check. We can give one check in the position. My apologies. We can give one check with a piece that isn't these two. That I want to keep them still because they're doing very nice work. And oh no, I'm being ridiculous. We can give checks all over the place. This bishop has a job. It's protecting the rook, so it can't move. The rook doesn't want to move. This bishop doesn't want to move. So with all those pieces staying still, this knight move is the answer. Now, it took me a while to figure that out. We can't move this knight to give a check because the queen is pinning that knight to the king. So we give this knight up, the queen takes, and then this knight now does give the checkmate. There's no movement for the king. The knight can't be taken. Perfect. Second to last puzzle. This is just a naughty puzzle. This is a mate in 3, so I'll give you 3, 2, 1. Okay. Now, this is a really, really naughty puzzle. The queen is on pre. It can be taken, but we say, I don't care about the queen being taken. We can give a mate with these two beautiful central knights. We take the pawn on d4. We say if you take the queen, it's check, and then mate. And if the king were to move, instead of going to h3, if the king were to move down to g4, then we give a check with the pawn. And then in this position, when the king is forced even further forward, all of those squares are covered with knights, pawns, bishops. Well, in the bishop doesn't need to be covering h6, so we can give, all we need to do is give a check without undefending a pawn. In this case, we give a bishop check, and that's checkmate. But the more critical, more beautiful line is when the king goes onto the edge of the board, and we give a mate with the knight, which is very nice. Okay, and I will give you one more puzzle, and this one I'm not going to give you the answer to. So this is a puzzle from CT Art 4.0, and it is in a section that's called Annihilating the Pieces, Defending the Back Rank. So that's the clue. Annihilating the pieces, defending the back rank. I will give you this as a puzzle to solve. Send me messages in the comments. What is the answer to this puzzle? It's a mate. Is it a mate in 3? No. We're not in mate in 3 territory anymore. Just a puzzle with that group, that sort of theme that I described a second ago. Okay, fantastic. So 3.5 minutes now to discuss me being a grump. So on yesterday, I had a classical game scheduled, and the person who I was going to be playing with cancelled, and I could have taken that. I was going to be, they were a d4 player, so I was going to be, if I was playing black, I was going to be playing the Stonewall for the first time, which is a defense that Andras introduced me to. And I could have continued to train my Stonewall, I could have continued to do puzzles, but I decided, okay, well, I was ready for a game, and it's difficult to find decent quality classical games. People often rush, and there's no chance of a post-mortem where you sit down and have a conversation about the game afterwards. So I started playing 15 plus 10 games. And on paper, so this is December the 6th, on paper it looks like I did fine, like not a massive issue. I won 3 games, lost 2 games. But I had a massive meltdown and felt like I can't play chess. I don't know why the hell I'm even doing this. I'm meant to be, improving as fast as I possibly can, and yet I'm still stuck in the 1400s. I'm still making the most ridiculous, stupid, unthought through moves and making mistakes, which as soon as my opponent makes a move, I realize, well, yes, obviously they were going to do that. That's the move. Obviously, I should have noticed that was going to happen. You've pinned my knight to my queen, and I'm going to lose my knight. And for me to have not been able to see that just completely frustrates me. So even in these wins, I was playing in a way that I wasn't particularly happy about. I won on time on one of them because they just sort of disconnected, and they won another one. This 1500, they lost their queen. It wasn't. It was a sort of discovered attack on the queen. I was threatening something else, but it was very frustrating. And then on these 2 losses, I just made stupid moves, and I was basically already on tilt even before having lost a game. So I wasn't in a good position. So what I've realized is I was in a bad mood the whole day. I got to the end of the day and I was still grumpy. So what I've realized is I need to not play any rapid games, only classical games, which is a tenet of the Chess Dojo. But I'm discovering that about myself now, and rather than being told to do it, I know I need to do it now. So I'm promising this in a public space. You can obviously check my games on Lichess and on chess.com. You know my username. I'm not going to do rapid games anymore, and you can hold me to account if I do. I want to play slower games. I do not want to be in a situation where I make a move and then my opponent makes a move and I think that was obvious. I should have considered that. And I'm basically doing it because I'm making moves within a minute, and I shouldn't be doing that. So that's my 15-minute video. I think I'll sign off here. I don't think there's anything else to say. Have a lovely rest of your day. Have a go at that puzzle and let me know. Thank you very much. Goodbye.